The restaurant's laughter sliced through Elliot like a blade, each chuckle a reminder of the eyes boring into him. He stood frozen, his fingers tightening around Javier's hand. As the server's mocking tone echoed, "We don't serve your kind here." In that moment, under the glittering chandeliers of Bella Vita, Seattle's trendiest eatery, Elliot felt the weight of every whispered slur he'd ever endured. It was supposed to be a celebration. Elliot, 28, had just landed a breakthrough deal for his tech startup, a passion project born from sleepless nights and a stubborn belief in a better world. Javier, his partner of 3 years, had insisted on dinner at Bella Vita, a place they'd dreamed of visiting since their first date. Javier's warm brown eyes had sparkled as he made the reservation, promising a night of wine, laughter, and a rare moment to breathe. But now, standing in the restaurant's opulent dining room, Elliot's triumph felt like ash. The server, a wiry man named Derek with a sneer that curled like smoke, had singled them out the moment they'd walked in hand. "Table for 2. Derek had asked, his voice dripping with mockery. "Or are you just here to make a scene?" The words landed like a punch, and the nearby tables erupted in stifled giggles. Javier's grip on Elliot's hand tightened, his jaw clenching, but he said nothing. Elliot's chest burned with a familiar mix of shame and fury, the kind that had followed him since he was a kid in rural Ohio, where being openly gay meant being a target. "Let's go," Elliot muttered, tugging Javier toward the door. But Javier, ever the optimist, shook his head. "No, we're not running. Not tonight." His voice was steady, but Elliot saw the flicker of pain in his eyes. Javier, 30, a graphic designer with a laugh that could light up a room, had grown up in Miami's vibrant Cuban-American community, where acceptance wasn't guaranteed but love was fierce. He'd fought for their relationship, for every moment they stole in a world that didn't always welcome them. Tonight, he wasn't backing down. They sat, despite the stares, despite Derek's deliberate slowness in bringing menus, despite the way he accidentally spilled water on Elliot's lap. The other staff watched, some smirking, others averting their eyes. The manager, a woman named Claudia with sharp cheekbones and sharper indifference, did nothing. Elliot's hands shook as he tried to focus on the menu, but the words blurred. He wasn't just a customer here, he was an exhibit, a spectacle for the privileged diners who whispered behind their wine glasses. Javier leaned close, his voice low. "You're stronger than this. El. Don't let them win." But Elliot wasn't so sure. He'd spent years building a life where he could walk tall, where his queerness wasn't a liability. Yet here, in this gleaming restaurant, he was reduced to that scared teenager again, the one who hid his truth to survive. He wanted to scream, to flip the table, to make them all feel the sting of their cruelty. Instead, he sat, silent, as Derek returned with their appetizers, slamming the plates down with a smirk. "You too enjoy," Derek said, the words laced with venom. "Don't make too much of a mess." The table beside them snickered again, and Elliot's vision tunneled. He could feel Javier's hand on his, grounding him, but it wasn't enough. Not tonight. Not when every laugh felt like a slap, every glance a judgment. He pushed his chair back, the screech of wood on tile cutting through the dining room's hum. "I need air," he choked out, striding toward the exit. Javier followed, his steps quick but calm, his presence a tether in the storm of Elliot's emotions. Outside, the Seattle rain had started, a fine mist that clung to their skin. Elliot leaned against the brick wall, his breath ragged, his dark hair plastered to his forehead. Javier stood beside him, silent but close, his leather jacket slung over his shoulder like a shield. "I can't do this anymore," Elliot whispered. "I thought we were past this. I thought." His voice broke, and he hated himself for it. Javier's hand found his, their fingers interlocking, warm against the cold night air. We're not past it, Javier said softly. But we're not alone, either. And we're not done fighting. His eyes, usually so full of mischief, were fierce now, burning with a quiet resolve that made Elliot's heart ache. Javier had always been the one to pull him back from the edge, to remind him that their love was worth every battle. But tonight, Elliot didn't want comfort. He wanted justice. He didn't know it yet, but the gears were already turning. Bella Vita, with its polished facade and rotten core, was about to face a reckoning. And Elliot, the man they'd humiliated, would be the one to deliver it. Inside, the restaurant hummed on, oblivious to the storm brewing outside. Claudia, the manager, checked her phone, bored, while Derek wiped down a table, his smirk still in place. The diners laughed, clinked glasses, and carried on, unaware that the man they'd mocked was about to change everything. Elliot's startup wasn't just a success, it was a juggernaut, backed by investors who saw his vision and his fire. And tonight, that fire was about to ignite. Elliot pulled out his phone, his fingers trembling not with fear, but with purpose. He scrolled to a contact he hadn't called in months, Marcus, his investor, a man with a knack for turning opportunities into empires. Marcus, Elliot said when the call connected, his voice steady now. I need you to look into something for me. Fast. As the rain fell harder, Elliot's eyes locked on the glowing sign of Bella Vita. He wasn't just a guest anymore. He was a force. And by the end of the night, this restaurant and everyone in it would know his name. The rain battered Elliot's face as he stood outside Bella Vita, his phone pressed to his ear. Marcus's voice crackled through, sharp and curious. You want to buy a restaurant? Tonight. Elliot, what's going on? Elliot's gaze didn't waver from the glowing sign above the entrance, its elegant script mocking him. It's not just a restaurant, he said, his voice low but firm. It's personal. He explained the humiliation, the server's cruelty, the manager's indifference. Each word felt like spitting out poison, but it fueled him. Marcus listened, his silence heavy with understanding. As a black entrepreneur who'd faced his own share of closed doors, Marcus knew the sting of being dismissed. Give me an hour, Marcus said finally. I'll dig into Bella Vita's financials. If it's viable, we'll move. Elliot nodded, though Marcus couldn't see, and hung up. Javier, leaning against the wall beside him, raised an eyebrow. You're serious about this? He asked, his tone a mix of awe and concern. Dead serious, Elliot replied. His mind was racing, piecing together a plan. Bella Vita wasn't just a restaurant, it was a symbol of everything he'd fought against, prejudice dressed up in fine dining, cruelty cloaked in civility. He'd built his tech company, Prism Analytics, to empower the marginalized, to give a voice to those the world ignored. Buying Bella Vita wasn't just revenge, it was a statement. They walked to a nearby coffee shop, its warm lights a stark contrast to the cold drizzle outside. Inside, the air smelled of espresso and cinnamon, and the barista, a young woman with a rainbow pin on her apron, gave them a knowing smile. Elliot ordered a black coffee, Javier a latte, and they settled into a corner booth. Javier's fingers drummed on the table, his usual calm fraying at the edges. This is big. Like, buy a restaurant and burn it down big. Are you sure? Elliot met his eyes, the weight of the night still heavy in his chest. I'm not burning it down, Javi. I'm taking it over. They don't get to treat us like garbage and walk away unscathed. Javier nodded slowly, his hand finding Elliot's under the table. Okay. But we do this together. Yeah. Always, Elliot said, squeezing his hand. The moment felt like a vow, a promise forged in the fire of their shared pain. Javier's strength wasn't loud like Elliot's, it was quiet, steady, like the tide wearing down stone. Together, they were unstoppable. Marcus called back faster than expected. Bella Vita's bleeding money, he said, excitement creeping into his voice. Bad management, high turnover, and a string of lawsuits for workplace issues. The owner's desperate to sell. I can get you a meeting tonight. Elliot's pulse quickened. This was real. He glanced at Javier, who gave a small nod, his eyes gleaming with something like pride. The meeting was set for 10 p.m. at a sleek downtown office, the kind of place where deals were made over whiskey and handshakes. The owner, a man named Vincent Russo, was a wiry Italian-American in his 50s. His suit impeccably tailored, but his eyes tired. He barely looked at Elliot and Javier as they entered, his attention fixed on Marcus, who'd flown in from San Francisco on a red-eye just for this. Prism Analytics. Huh, Vincent said, leaning back in his chair. Tech money's good, but why a restaurant? You're out of your league. His tone was dismissive, but Elliot caught the desperation beneath it. Bella Vita was Vincent's pride, but it was also his albatross. I'm not here to play restaurateur, Elliot said, his voice cold. I'm here to fix what you broke. Vincent's eyes narrowed, but Marcus cut in, laying out the numbers, a cash offer. Generous but firm, backed by Prism's investors. Vincent blanched at the speed of it all, but the numbers didn't lie. By 11:30 p.m. The papers were signed. Bella Vita was Elliot's. They returned to the restaurant just before closing. The dining room was nearly empty, the last patrons lingering over dessert. Derek was wiping down tables, his smirk gone but his arrogance intact. Claudia stood at the hostess stand, scrolling through her phone, oblivious to the shift in the air. Elliot walked in, Javier at his side, Marcus trailing behind like a general. The staff froze, sensing something was wrong. Staff meeting. Now, Elliot said, his voice cutting through the room like a whip. The servers, cooks, and bussers gathered, their faces a mix of confusion and annoyance. Claudia finally looked up, her expression sour. Who are you to call a meeting? She snapped. Elliot stepped forward, his heart pounding but his voice steady. I'm the new owner. The room went silent, the air thick with shock. Derek's face paled, his eyes darting to Claudia, who looked like she'd been slapped. As of midnight, Bella Vita is mine, and you're all done here. The words hung in the air, heavy and final. Javier's hand brushed against Elliot's, a quiet anchor. This wasn't just about firing a few bigots, it was about reclaiming a space that had been weaponized against them. Elliot's vision for Bella Vita was bigger than revenge. He saw a place where everyone could belong, where no one would ever feel the way he had tonight. As the staff filed out, some muttering, others stunned into silence, Elliot turned to Javier. This is just the start, he said, his voice soft but resolute. Javier smiled, his eyes bright with possibility. Let's make it ours. Then. Outside, the rain had stopped, and the city felt new, alive with potential. Bella Vita was no longer a battleground, it was a canvas. And Elliot was ready to paint. The fluorescent lights of Bella Vita buzzed faintly as the last of the fired staff shuffled out into the Seattle night. Elliot stood in the empty dining room, the weight of what he'd done settling over him like a heavy coat. Javier was at his side, his presence a steady warmth, while Marcus surveyed the space with a businessman's eye, already calculating renovations. This place has bones, Marcus said, running a hand along a polished wooden beam. You could turn it into something special. Elliot nodded, but his mind was elsewhere. The adrenaline of the takeover was fading, replaced by a quiet ache. He could still hear Derek's sneer, feel the sting of the diner's laughter. Owning Bella Vita didn't erase that moment, it only gave him the power to rewrite what came next. He turned to Javier, whose dark eyes were searching his face. You okay? Javier asked, his voice soft but probing. I will be, Elliot said, forcing a smile. This is our chance, right? To make something better. Javier's hand found his, their fingers interlocking. And for a moment, the empty restaurant felt full of possibility. But the road ahead wasn't simple. Buying Bella Vita was one thing. Transforming it was another. By morning, the news had spread. Local blogs buzzed with headlines. Tech entrepreneur buys Bella Vita after discrimination scandal. Social media was a wildfire. Some praised Elliot's bold move. Others called it a publicity stunt. A few ex-posts from former Bella Vita staff, including Derek, painted him as a vengeful tyrant, conveniently omitting their own actions. Elliot scrolled through the comments on his phone, his jaw tight. They're rewriting history already, he muttered. Javier, sprawled on their couch in their Capitol Hill apartment, looked up from his sketchpad. He was drafting designs for the restaurant's new branding, his pencil moving in quick, confident strokes. Let them talk, he said. The truth doesn't need their permission. His calm was infectious, and Elliot set the phone down, leaning into Javier's shoulder. They'd faced worse than online vitriol, family rejection, workplace bias, the daily grind of existing as a queer couple in a world that didn't always make room for them. This was just another fight. The next week was a blur of meetings. Marcus connected Elliot with a restaurant consultant, Lena, a no-nonsense woman with a knack for turnarounds. She walked through Bella Vita with a clipboard, pointing out inefficiencies, outdated kitchen equipment, a poorly designed floor plan, a menu that screamed pretension over substance. You've got a gem here, Lena said, but it's been run into the ground. What's your vision? Elliot hesitated. He bought the place on impulse, driven by anger and pride. But now he needed a purpose. I wanted to be a haven, he said finally. A place where every Univariana feels welcome. No gatekeeping. No judgment. Just good food. Good vibes. Lena raised an eyebrow, scribbling a note. Ambitious. I like it. But you'll need a team you can trust. Hiring was the next hurdle. Elliot and Javier spent days interviewing candidates, prioritizing diversity and heart over polished resumes. They found Aisha, a black lesbian chef with a passion for fusion cuisine, who'd been overlooked by every major restaurant in town. They hired Leo, a trans barista with a knack for mixology, and Priya, a non-binary server whose warmth could disarm even the grumpiest customer. Each hire felt like a brick in the foundation of something new, something theirs. But not everyone was on board. Claudia, the former manager, had stayed in touch with some of the old staff, and whispers of sabotage reached Elliot's ears. A delivery of fresh produce arrived spoiled, with no explanation from the supplier. The restaurant's social media accounts were hacked, posting crude messages that took hours to clean up. Elliot suspected Claudia's hand, but had no proof. She's trying to scare us off, he told Javier one night, pacing their apartment. She thinks we'll fail. Javier set down his sketchpad, his latest design a vibrant logo of a phoenix rising from a plate. Then we don't fail, he said simply. We show them what this place can be. His optimism was a lifeline, but Elliot couldn't shake the feeling that the battle was far from over. By the end of the week, Bella Vita's doors were still closed, but the transformation had begun. The old decor, cold, sterile, elitist, was stripped away, replaced with warm colors and local art. Aisha was in the kitchen, experimenting with a menu that blended her southern roots with Pacific Northwest flavors. Leo was crafting a signature cocktail list, each drink named after a moment of queer history: the Stonewall, the Marcia, the Psulse. Priya was training a small but fierce front-of-house team, teaching them to greet every guest like family. Elliot stood in the dining room, watching the chaos of renovation unfold. It was messy, expensive, and terrifying, but it was theirs. Javier slipped an arm around his waist. His voice a quiet hum. We're doing this. Elle. We're really doing it. For the first time since that humiliating night, Elliot felt hope. Bella Vita wasn't just a restaurant. Anna Maria, it was a rebellion. A love letter to everyone who'd ever been told they didn't belong. And they were just getting started. The scent of fresh paint and roasted garlic filled Bella Vita as the grand reopening loomed. Elliot stood at the center of the dining room, watching Aisha direct her kitchen crew with the precision of a conductor. The new menu was bold, crispy fried green tomatoes paired with Dungeness crab, jerk spice salmon over creamy grits, vegan options that didn't feel like an afterthought. Every dish told a story, a nod to the team's diverse roots and shared vision. But outside, the world wasn't as kind. A protest had formed on the sidewalk, a small but loud group waving signs, "Keep politics out of dining." And Bella Vita deserves better. Elliot recognized a few faces, former staff, including Derek, who stood at the front, shouting about woke agendas. The irony wasn't lost on him. They'd humiliated him for being gay, yet now claimed he was the one pushing an agenda. Javier, sketching table layouts nearby, glanced out the window and frowned. They're just noise. Elle, don't let them in. But the noise was hard to ignore. The protests drew local news crews, their cameras flashing as reporters interviewed Derek, who spun a tale of being unfairly fired for standing up for tradition. Social media amplified the narrative, with ex-posts calling Elliot a tech bro bully and Bella Vita a failed experiment. The vitriol stung, but what hurt more were the quieter message emails from potential customers vowing to boycott, citing family values. Elliot's dream of a haven felt fragile, like a house of cards in a storm. Lena, the consultant, was unfazed. "This is Seattle," she said during a strategy meeting. "People love a redemption story. Lean into it." She suggested a soft opening, inviting local influencers and community leaders to experience the new Bella Vita. Elliot hesitated. Opening the doors felt like exposing a wound, but Javier agreed with Lena. "We show them who we are," he said, his hand squeezing Elliot's. "No hiding." The soft opening was set for a Friday night, a week before the official relaunch. The team worked around the clock, polishing every detail. Leo's cocktails sparkled in mason jars, each one a vibrant tribute to resilience. Priya's staff moved with grace, their smiles genuine despite the pressure. Aisha's kitchen hummed with energy, her laughter cutting through the clatter of pans. Elliot and Javier walked the floor, checking every table, every light, every moment. It had to be perfect. The night arrived, and with it, a mix of guests, queer activists, food bloggers, a city council member, and a few curious locals. The dining room glowed with warm amber light, the walls adorned with murals by Javier, vibrant tapestry of faces, hands, and stories. Elliot greeted guests at the door, his nerves masked by a practiced smile. Javier stayed close, his presence a quiet anchor. "We got this," he whispered, and Elliot believed him. The evening started strong. Guests raved about Aisha's food, Leo's drinks, and the inclusive vibe. A trans woman named Maya, a prominent activist, pulled Elliot aside to thank him. "This place feels like home," she said, her eyes shining. "You're doing something real here." Her words were a balm, but the peace didn't last. Halfway through the night, a group of protesters slipped past security, led by Claudia. They stormed the dining room, shouting slurs and waving their signs. "This isn't your space," Claudia yelled, her face twisted with rage. Derek was behind her, filming on his phone, no doubt live streaming to X. The guests froze, some reaching for their phones, others looking to Elliot for a response. His heart pounded, but this time, he didn't flinch. "Get out," he said, his voice steady and loud. You don't belong here anymore. Claudia laughed. A sharp, bitter sound. You think you can erase us? This place will fail without us. Javier stepped forward, his calm unshaken. It's already succeeding, he said, gesturing to the room, the diverse faces, the warmth, the defiance. You're the ones who don't fit. The guests began to clap, slow at first, then louder, drowning out the protesters. Priya and her team escorted Claudia's group out, their professionalism unshaken. The room buzzed with renewed energy, guests raising glasses in solidarity. Later, as the last guests left, Elliot collapsed into a chair, exhausted but alive. Javier sat beside him, their shoulders touching. We did it, Javier said, his voice thick with emotion. We made it through. But Elliot knew this was only the beginning. The protests, the hate, they wouldn't stop. Transforming Bella Vita wasn't just about one night. It was about building something that could withstand the storm. He looked at Javier, at the team cleaning up around them, and felt a flicker of something stronger than fear, purpose. Outside, the city hummed, unaware of the battle being fought inside these walls. Bella Vita was no longer just a restaurant, it was a beacon, a challenge, a promise. And Elliot was ready to keep fighting for it. The soft opening's success lingered like a warm glow. But Elliot couldn't shake the shadow of Claudia's intrusion. Her venomous words, "This place will fail without us," echoed in his mind as he sat in Bella Vita's office, poring over budgets with Lena. The numbers were tight. Renovations, new staff, and marketing had eaten into Prism's cash reserves. If the grand reopening didn't draw a crowd, Bella Vita could become a cautionary tale instead of a triumph. Javier was in the dining room, finalizing the decor. His murals now covered every wall, a vibrant celebration of queer history and resilience, portraits of Marsha P. Johnson, Audre Lorde, and local heroes whose names weren't in history books but deserved to be. He'd poured his heart into the space, and every brushstroke felt like a declaration of love. Elliot watched him from the office doorway, his chest tightening. Javier deserved better than a failing dream. We need a hook, Lena said, tapping her pen against the desk. Something to make the reopening unmissable. Elliot nodded, his mind racing. They'd already planned live music, a drag performance, and a menu showcase. But it wasn't enough. Seattle's dining scene was brutal. New restaurants opened and closed like flowers in a storm. Bella Vita needed to stand out, not just as a restaurant, but as a movement. The idea came late that night. As Elliot and Javier lay in bed, the city's hum filtering through their apartment window. What if we make it a community night? Elliot said, sitting up. Invite local queer organizations. Donate a portion of the proceeds. Make it about more than just food. Javier's eyes lit up. Like a celebration of us. All of us. They spent the next hour brainstorming, their excitement building as the vision took shape, a night of joy, defiance, and unity, with Bella Vita as the heart of it. The next morning, they pitched the idea to the team. Aisha suggested partnering with a local food bank to serve free meals to unhoused queer youth. Leo proposed a pay-what-you-can cocktail hour to make the night accessible. Priya offered to reach out to queer artists for pop-up exhibits. The energy in the room was electric, each idea building on the last. Elliot felt a surge of pride. This wasn't just his dream anymore. It was theirs. But the outside world wasn't done with them. 2 days before the reopening, a brick shattered one of Bella Vita's new windows. A note taped to it. Go back to your tech world. Faggot. The word hit Elliot like a punch, dragging him back to that humiliating night. Javier found him staring at the broken glass, his hands shaking. They're scared, Javier said, his voice steady. This is what people do when they're losing. Elliot wanted to believe him, but the vandalism felt personal. A reminder that their fight wasn't just about a restaurant, it was about their right to exist. The police came, took a report, and left with promises to look into it. Elliot didn't hold his breath. Instead, he called a glazier to fix the window and doubled down on security for the reopening. He wouldn't let fear win. The team rallied, working through the night to clean up the damage. Aisha cooked comfort food for everyone, mac and cheese spiked with smoked paprika, a recipe from her grandmother. Leo blasted music, turning the cleanup into a dance party. Priya hung fairy lights around the new window, turning the repair into a statement of resilience. By dawn, Bella Vita looked stronger than ever, its wounds transformed into art. The reopening arrived under a clear Seattle sky, a rare break from the autumn rain. The dining room buzzed with anticipation as guests began to arrive: queer families, allies, local activists, and curious foodies. Maya, the activist from the soft opening, brought a group from her nonprofit, their laughter filling the space. A drag queen named Sapphire took the stage, her performance of "I Will Survive" bringing the crowd to their feet. Aisha's food flew out of the kitchen, each plate a masterpiece of flavor and heart. Leo's cocktails flowed, and Priya's team moved like a well-oiled machine, their warmth infectious. Elliot and Javier worked the room, greeting guests, sharing their story. An older gay couple, together for 40 years, pulled them aside. "We never thought we'd see a place like this," the man said, his partner nodding. "Thank you." Elliot's throat tightened, and Javier's hand found his, grounding him as always. As the night wound down, Elliot stepped outside for air, Javier at his side. The city sparkled, its lights reflecting off the wet pavement. "We did it," Elliot said, his voice thick. "We really did it." Javier smiled, pulling him close. "This is just the beginning, El. We're building something that lasts." In that moment, under the stars, Bella Vita felt like more than a restaurant. It was a home, a sanctuary, a victory. The success of Bella Vita's reopening was a spark that caught fire. Local papers ran glowing reviews, calling it Seattle's new heart of inclusivity. Social media buzzed with photos of Aisha's dishes, Leo's cocktails, and Javier's murals, tagged with Bella Vita Rising. Reservations booked out for weeks, and the wait list grew daily. But Elliot knew better than to relax. The brick through the window wasn't a one-off. Hate didn't vanish overnight. A week after the reopening, Claudia struck again. An anonymous tip to a local health inspector led to a surprise visit. The inspector, a stern woman with a clipboard, combed through the kitchen, citing minor violations that felt suspiciously targeted: a mislabeled spice jar, a fridge 2 degrees too warm. Aisha handled it with grace, but Elliot saw the toll it took. "They're trying to wear us down," she said, wiping sweat from her brow. "But I've dealt with worse." Elliot wasn't so sure. The violations came with fines, small but cumulative, and the negative press gave ammunition to their detractors. Ex-posts from accounts linked to Claudia and Derek painted Bella Vita as a health hazard, urging boycotts. Elliot spent hours countering the narrative online, but it felt like shouting into a void. He needed a way to turn the tide, to show the city what Bella Vita stood for. Javier had the answer. "Let's host a fundraiser," he said one morning over coffee, his sketchpad open to a new mural designated rainbow phoenix soaring over Seattle. "For queer youth. Show the world we're not just a restaurant weary of force for good." Elliot loved the idea, but doubt gnawed at him. Would it be enough to drown out the hate? They planned the fundraiser for the following month, partnering with Maya's nonprofit to support unhoused queer teens. Aisha crafted a special menu, with proceeds going to the cause. Leo designed a mocktail for younger guests, named The Future. Priya recruited local queer musicians and poets for performances. The team's energy was infectious, But Elliot couldn't shake the feeling that Claudia was waiting for another chance to strike. She didn't disappoint. 2 days before the fundraiser, a fake review bomb hit Bella Vita's online profiles. Dozens of one-star ratings flooded in, citing everything from rude staff to food poisoning. None were verifiable, but the damage was done. New customers hesitated, and cancellations trickled in. Elliot traced the reviews to dummy accounts. Some linked to Claudia's old staff. He wanted to confront her, to end this once and for all. But Javier stopped him. "Don't play her game," he said. "Focus on the fundraiser. That's how we win." The night of the fundraiser arrived, and Bella Vita was packed. The dining room glowed with fairy lights and hope. Every table filled with supporters. Maya emceed, her voice warm and commanding as she shared stories of the teens her nonprofit helped kids kicked out of their homes. Kids who'd found family in each other. A young poet named Kai took the stage, their words about surviving as a non-binary teen cutting through the room like a blade. Aisha's food was a hit. Leo's mocktails flew out of the bar, and Priya's team kept the energy high. Elliot and Javier moved through the crowd, their hands brushing as they passed. The night felt like a miracle, but Elliot's nerves were raw. He kept expecting Claudia to burst in, to ruin this moment of triumph. Instead, the interruption came from an unexpected source, Marcus, who'd flown in for the event. He pulled Elliot aside, his face serious. "I got a tip," he said. "Claudia's been talking to a developer. They want to buy the building Bella Vita's in. Force you out." Elliot's stomach dropped. Owning the restaurant was one thing, but the building was leased. If Claudia and her allies bought it, they could raise the rent, evict them, or make life impossible. "How do we fight this?" he asked, his voice tight. Marcus grinned, a rare spark of mischief in his eyes. "We buy the building first." He'd already done the math. Prism's investors were willing to back the purchase, but it would stretch Elliot's resources to the breaking point. It was a risk, but so was everything they'd done so far. Elliot looked across the room at Javier, who was laughing with Maya and Kai. His face lit up with joy. This was why they fought for nights like this. For people like these. He nodded at Marcus. "Do it. Whatever it takes." As the fundraiser wound down, guests raised glasses in a toast to Bella Vita, to resilience, to love. Elliot stood beside Javier, their fingers intertwined, and felt the weight of their journey. They'd turned a place of pain into a beacon of hope. But the fight wasn't over. Claudia was still out there, and the building's future hung in the balance. But for tonight, they'd won. The fundraiser's success was a beacon, but the threat of Claudia's developer loomed like a storm cloud. Elliot barely slept. His nights spent strategizing with Marcus while Javier poured his heart into keeping Bella Vita's spirit alive. The restaurant was thriving, reservations booked months out. Aisha's menu earning national buzz. Leo's cocktails a social media sensation. But owning the building was the final piece of the puzzle, the only way to secure their future. Marcus moved fast, negotiating with the building's owner, a reclusive investor named Helen who cared more about profit than sentiment. Claudia's developer had made an offer, but Marcus outbid them, leveraging Prism's cash flow and Elliot's vision. The deal closed in a whirlwind. By week's end, Bella Vita's building was theirs. Elliot signed the papers in a daze, the weight of the moment sinking in. This wasn't just a restaurant anymore. It was a legacy. But Claudia wasn't done. A week after the purchase, a smear campaign hit X, accusing Bella Vita of financial misconduct. Anonymous posts claimed Elliot had used shady tech money to buy the building, painting him as a corporate raider. Derek's name appeared in the threads, his bitterness clear. The accusations were baseless, but they stirred doubt among some customers. Cancellations spiked, and Elliot's inbox filled with hate mail. Javier found him in the office, staring at the screen. "You're spiraling," Javier said. closing the laptop. This is what they want. Don't give it to them. He pulled Elliot to his feet, leading him to the dining room, where Aisha, Leo, and Priya were prepping for the night. The team's laughter, the clink of glasses, the scent of fresh earth grounded him. This is what matters, Javier said. This is what we're fighting for. Elliot nodded, but the fire in him was flickering. He needed to end this, not just for Bella Vita, but for himself. He called a meeting with a local journalist, Sarah, who'd covered the reopening. Over coffee, he laid out the truth, the humiliation that started it all, Claudia's sabotage, the team's resilience. Sarah listened, her pen flying across her notebook. This is a hell of a story, she said. Let me tell it. Her article dropped 2 days later, a searing expose titled From Humiliation to Triumph, The Rebirth of Bella Vita. It detailed the discrimination Elliot and Javier faced, the staff's complicity, and their relentless campaign to undermine the restaurant. Sarah included interviews with Aisha, Leo, Priya, and Maya, letting their voices shine. The response was overwhelming. Support poured in, from customers booking tables to allies sharing the story across X. Claudia's smear campaign crumbled, her credibility shattered. The final blow came quietly. Marcus uncovered evidence that Claudia had been siphoning money from Bella Vita's accounts before Elliot's takeover, a discovery that led to a police investigation. Derek, implicated as her accomplice, vanished from social media. The protests stopped, the fake reviews slowed, and Bella Vita stood stronger than ever. On a crisp Seattle evening, 6 months after that humiliating night, Elliot and Javier hosted a private dinner for their team and closest allies. The dining room glowed with candlelight, Javier's murals vibrant against the walls. Aisha served a feast, her grandmother's cornbread alongside miso-glazed cod, a nod to their shared journey. Leo's cocktail sparkled, and Priya led a toast to family, to fighting, to us. Elliot stood, his hand in Javier's, and spoke. That night, they tried to break us. They thought we'd run, that we'd hide. But we didn't. We built this. His voice cracked, and Javier squeezed his hand. Bella Vita isn't just a restaurant. It's proof that we belong, that our love, our lives, are worth fighting for. The room erupted in cheers, glasses clinking, laughter rising. Maya stood, her voice steady. You've given us more than a place to eat. You've given us a home. Elliot's eyes burned with tears, but they were tears of joy, of victory. Later, as the guests left, Elliot and Javier stood outside, the city alive around them. The Bella Vita sign glowed, no longer a symbol of pain but of triumph. Javier pulled Elliot close, his lips brushing his ear. We did it. El. We made it ours. Elliot nodded, his heart full. They'd turned humiliation into power, hate into love. Bella Vita was more than a restaurant, it was a testament to their resilience, a beacon for anyone who'd ever been told they didn't belong. And as they stood together, hand in hand, Elliot knew they'd keep fighting, not just for themselves, but for everyone who needed a place to call home.